There's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
It's the Sitting Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
Oh, no! Because there's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in baseball! No crying!
We are your home for New York sports, and you're listening to the Sittin Sportside podcast right here on 1045theteam.com. And I say that because this is the time we're going for the American League East preview right here on the Sittin Sportside podcast. We've already done the AL Central and the National League West. You can check those out. Obviously, we have seen some injuries in one or two of the scenarios, but still, I think worth a listen if you're a fan of either of those teams or just a fan or want to hear my opinions on those divisions. We're going to dive right here into the AL East and get you some fantasy baseball sleepers as well. If you haven't drafted yet, you can use them. And if you have, which I would imagine the season starts pretty soon, these could be free agents in your league to look up as well, or to target maybe in a low budget or a low end, high reward trade. Now, the American League East has been one of the more competitive divisions. Last year, you had 4 teams that were vying for a playoff spot. Unfortunately, the Yankees were the odd man out in that one, while the Blue Jays and Orioles get wild card, and the Red Sox won the division outright. All of them ended up losing, though, eventually. 2 of them to the Indians, 1 to each other with the Blue Jays. And the Edwin Encarnacion walk-off against Ubaldo Jimenez in the wild card game. So we'll get to what will replace Encarnacion. As we always do, I'm going to start this out. If we're going to pick the 5th place team, go up from there. And in previous podcasts, I did not mention who I thought was going to make a wild card, and I'll actually do that in the last podcast. So make sure to listen in. The last podcast most likely will be the National League East division. So keep your eye out for the next 3 after this one. And then in the last podcast, I'll give you my 2 wild card teams per league. 5th place team in the American League East, and it kind of hurts me to do it because I really like this team and the potential that it has, but unfortunately, based on past performances, among other things, it has to be the Tampa Bay Rays for me in last place in the American League East. But look at the rotation. You'll see as good of a rotation, or could be as good of a rotation from 1 to 5 as a lot of rotations, and they have people waiting in the wings. Now I'll get to the people that are going to be there, and the players that are going to be there, and Chris Archer and Jake Odorizzi, Alex Cobb, the 1, 2, 3. Well, Cobb is the most likely out of all those to possibly get traded this season to a contender if they're out of it by July 31st. Archer is just, I think, had a down year last year, and the interesting part about that and him being in a quote-unquote down year was that Chris Archer still pitched in 2016 to a 4.02 ERA. Like I said, down year though, but 233 strikeouts in 200 innings. So we know Chris Archer can really pitch and can do a good job for them. If he gets that ERA down to what it had been before, which is in the 3s, we know that he can definitely do good things for this team. Odorizzi, same type of thing. A very good pitcher. Cobb was injured last year, same type of thing. That they need to get back to certain form. Now you get into some of the question marks in Blake Snell and Matt Andriese, whether Andriese will get the starter in the beginning of the season, probably going to get it, but you have guys like Brett Honeywell waiting in the wing, and a local product from Maple Hill, Jamie Schultz, possibly getting an opportunity with the team in the starting rotation. But Blake Snell has a really good chance of being a Rookie of the Year. I'm not sure actually he's going to be eligible for that because he pitched a lot down the stretch last year, but whether he's a rookie, whether he's a second-year player, he's going to be a very good young player, and he's going to open up some eyes this year for the Tampa Bay Rays if you haven't already heard of him. His debut did come against the Yankees, and he had pitched a very good start. That was in May of last year, but he came up later in the season and pitched to a total ERA that was 3.54 with 98 strikeouts and 89 innings. So Blake Snell showed what he could do last year. It wasn't even his best. So that's how good that Snell can be. And that's the rotation that the top 4, I think, like I said, I think if all of them can just really put something together, that could be any of the best in the American League. I mean, I'm 100% honest there. I'm being 100% honest there. Like I said, some others waiting in the wing. Before we get to the hitters, let's look at the bullpen. Alex Colomé, one of the better closers, I think, in the league that you don't know. So if you don't know who Alex Colomé is, he's probably a closer that you don't know, and that's actually pretty good for them last year, and they can continue into more of a competitive team this year with Brad Boxberger and Xavier Cedeno in the back end as well, with Chase Whitley being in the bullpen as a long relief guy or a guy who could possibly be a 5th starter at some point during the year. Now to the lineup. This is where it gets a little dicey. The lineup is a little tough to maybe rally yourself around because you have the trade of Logan Forsythe. You have Logan Morrison at first base, which isn't great. And Matt Duffy continues to have some injury issues. Who's going to be their shortstop, with maybe Tim Beckham starting the year as a shortstop because of the injuries to Matt Duffy. So across the outfield, they locked up Kevin Kiermaier pretty well. He's the most important player, position player on this team, not named Evan Longoria, and I say that because of his defense in center field. And his back kind of picked up a little bit last year. So if Kiermaier can continue to do well outside of the top of that lineup and maybe start to get the legs moving on the base paths, we all know what he's going to do. He's a gold glover out there in center field. And if you haven't seen him play gold glover, two of the best center fielders, I think, in the entire Major League Baseball play in this division. We'll get to another one pretty soon. But Kevin Kiermaier, one of the best center fielders in the league defensively. And he's very important because of what he can do for the pitchers. The pitchers, like I said, they can be really good. With that defense out in center field, will be even better. Malk Smith could be a decent left fielder for them with Colby Rasmus, who's another acquisition. He's injured, though, as well. And Steven Souza Jr. has not been what they expected. And in the trade that they traded Will Myers, he was the main piece they got back from it. And he hasn't been what they kind of wanted from that deal. So it's kind of looking like, why did you do that deal? Because Trey Turner was the other thing that was gotten. That was in a 3-team deal. So they get Steven Souza, but not Trey Turner. And Trey Turner's ripping it up for the Nationals, who we'll talk about in the National League East preview. But that's besides the point. If Souza can put something together, he does have 20-20 potential. 20 stolen bases, 20 home runs. He's got the pop, but he strikes out a lot and doesn't get on base enough to really to be a threat. But like I said, if he puts something together, that could be big. Fantasy baseball guy to look at for this team, I think, would be down the stretch. Maybe would be Brad Miller. He's kind of the underappreciated guy in the middle of rounds. But maybe Corey Dickerson as well. And like I said about guys mid-season, it's a Brett Honeywell and Jamie Schultz, local product from Maple Hill, that could be guys mid-season that you could pick up who could be interesting pitchers for you down the stretch because they could come in and pitch well. If Matt Duff, and here's another prospect to look at if you're looking for the Rays, Willie Adames. He was acquired in the David Price deal. He's a young shortstop prospect. If Matt Duffy cannot get it together and cannot come back soon enough, who knows? Maybe they'll rush, quote-unquote, rush the top prospect to the major leagues. He could be an impact player down the stretch. That's the Tampa Bay Rays. 4th place team, and this is where it gets a little dicey because, like I said, you had 4 teams last year, and I think they're all going to come back and could have different teams. But the one team I'm looking at that could regress and not necessarily be the same team that they were last year, and granted, I did say this the same thing going into last year, and they still made the playoffs as a wild card, and that is the Baltimore Orioles. And it has to do with the pitching. It's kind of the opposite of the Tampa Bay Rays. I think you look at the hitters and you say, wow, this team actually has a good amount of hitters. They have a good amount of options around their roster from 1 to 9. But that rotation, the top of the rotation, Chris Tillman, he's got injury concerns. Kevin Gausman, Dylan Bundy, Wade Miley, Ubaldo Jimenez. Now, granted, here's my daily or whatever you want to call it, defense of Ubaldo Jimenez. I know he got absolutely taken to town in the wild card game against Edwin Encarnacion and the Toronto Blue Jays to lose it for the Baltimore Orioles, and it wasn't Zach Britton. No one's arguing that Zach Britton shouldn't have been in that game. I'm not arguing that. But Ubaldo Jimenez in September and a little bit of August down the stretch was as important to that rotation as anybody else because Ubaldo Jimenez did humans work for Buck Showalter down the stretch for the Baltimore Orioles. So that's not to say he can't be a good starter for them, but historically speaking, he hasn't done it for a full 30, 32 starts. Really, I don't even think ever. I mean, dating back to his Colorado Rockies days, that might have been 17 great starts. So he'll struggle. Wade Miley hasn't been anything to shake a stick at. It's going to be Kevin Gausman and Dylan Bundy kind of up to. The two young guys who are going to have to try to figure their way in, if you will, to being very good players and the top of the end rotation guys. Because with Chris Tillman out, I mean, who are you going to go to? Vidal Nuno, the former Yankee, Mike Wright, Logan Verrett, the former New York Met. So Gabriel Yanoa, former New York Met. Man, a lot of former New York players on the team. We are your home for New York sports, pointing out some of these things. So they're going to have to get some kind of thing. I don't know if they can go after Doug Fister, who still happens to be a free agent. I don't know what the plan is for the Baltimore Orioles, but that rotation is weak enough for me to be concerned about this team. But the hitters, Adam Jones, we saw what he's done in the World Baseball Classic. A good center fielder in his own right, defensively. Hyung-Soo Kim, I like him in left field. He had a big-time home run against the Toronto Blue Jays in that wild card game. So he'll get more everyday playing time. Of course, Manny Machado, third baseman, who will be, I think, batting third for this team. If not batting leadoff, I'm not sure necessarily where Showalter will go to the lineup. Sometimes he changes it up. I think he's better suited for a 3-4 because of how good that bat can be. And he's one of the most consistent players in the MLB nowadays. I got to give him credit where credit is due. He plays close to 160. I think he would have played all 162 games last year had he not got suspended. So that's important with Chris Davis and Mark Trumbo. And this is where I get a little bit dicey because I think that Mark Trumbo and his production from last year, leading the major leagues in home runs, can he really replicate 47 home runs and 108 RBIs? Now, the answer to that question is actually probably yes. He probably can replicate that. But do I see it? Based on Mark Trumbo's past, I don't necessarily know that I do. Because this guy, was he a contract guy? Is he a guy who only plays well enough when it's in a contract year for him? So I'm not sure Mark Trumbo will be the same dynamic player he was last year, but anything can happen in Camden Yards because we know that place is small enough to where guys can launch it out of the ballpark. And this team continues to hit home runs. And one of my favorite guys, here's a fantasy pickup. One of my favorite guys for this team is Jonathan Scope at the second base position. So that would be my fantasy guy. I know it's not a good pickup option if you already had drafted, but I really think, but maybe you could target him. I mean, I'm not sure how well people favor Jonathan Scope or value Jonathan Scope. Great player, I think Jonathan Scope is for this team, and he's like my favorite for them because of how much his power translates at second base for that team. And he's a Yankee killer, unfortunately. But last year, 25 home runs. This team was mashing them out all year. And Wellington Castillo, Beef Wellington. He's a solid replacement, in my personal opinion, to Matt Wieters. Doesn't have the same versatility as switch hitter, but I think he'll be good enough for them. And of course, you got to mention that back end of that bullpen. Zach Britton, an insane ERA. We were talking about how he wasn't even using the playoff game, but an insane ERA. 0.54 last year, 74 strikeouts in 67 innings, 69 appearances, 47 saves. A .84 whip. So we know Zach Britton, if he can keep that up out of the bullpen, that they're going to be pretty solid back end with Darren O'Day as well and Brad Brack. But, man, I just don't know if that starting pitching is going to be good enough for them. But they've proved me wrong multiple times before, and that's why I have them in 4th place. And this is where it gets a little frustrating for me because I believe, and I know it's a little biased, but I do believe in these New York Yankees. I do believe that they could possibly be competitive with the Red Sox and Blue Jays this year. And I obviously believe they're going to be competitive with the Baltimore Orioles and better than the Tampa Bay Rays. But I got to put the Yankees in 3rd place behind the Blue Jays and Red Sox. I'll give you my 1st and 2nd place picks in just a moment. Let's talk about your Yankees on your home for the Yankees this 2017 season. Just 104.5 The Team ESPN Radio, not 104.5theteam.com. You can only hear it on 104.5 The Team. And you'll be able to hear some stream fill during those games of Sittin Sportside podcast. So make sure to tune in those. But Yankees, man, is the future bright? Come on. I can't even see that stuff. The future's bright. I gotta put on my sunglasses, put on my shades, because this team's just, it's exuding. It's getting ready to explode. And this is how I felt with the Chicago Cubs 2 years ago. And we know how they won the World Series last year. So It's great to see this now coming to my team, the New York Yankees. It's just, we do know that the Cubs were the third best team in baseball. They ended up still coming in third in their division, but that 2 years ago. And that's where I felt that they were going to come into their own, and they did. But they still didn't make that. They still didn't make that push. While they still made the playoffs and had the third best record in all Major League Baseball, they didn't necessarily get to the level that they were in 2016. So that's where I feel with the Yankees, because you're not sure you're going to see how much you're going to see Gleyber Torres. I'm not sure how much you're going to see Clint Frazier. Not sure if you're even going to see Jordan Sheffield or Justice Sheffield, excuse me. But a guy I do know you're going to see is Greg Bird. A guy I do know you're going to see, Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge. These are guys that are going to be up early, young guys. You've already seen some of them. But now we're going to see a full, hopefully, knock on wood, 162 games, or whatever the rest days look like for this team. And the reason why, though, I'm actually pretty bullish on this team is because of the veterans they did bring in. Matt Holliday, love it. DH, all the dude has to worry about is hitting. Now, granted, he might have to go out in the field and play a little bit. I doubt we'll ever see him at first base at this point now, which was the original plan, maybe to get him play a little bit at first base. But I think he'll be more of a suited to maybe a little left field. But I think Girardi wants to exclusively play him at DH. But love the move for Matt Holliday, because all he is, he's a major league hitter. All he has to do is worry about coming in and hit. Chris Carter, same thing. All he has to worry about is coming in and hit whenever it's probably going to be mostly against lefties. So those two veteran pickups are great for this lineup. And not to mention that Aaron Hicks can't do any worse than he did in the first half of last year, and he actually picked it up at the end of last year. So you have a lot of guys who maybe you can come in and be good replacement players, if you will. Shortstop position is interesting right now, right? Because Didi's out for an extended period of time. How is that going to work out? I know a lot of people, including myself, kind of do want to see Gleyber Torres, but it's going to be either Ronald Torreyes or Tyler Wade, and I think both those could hold down the fort. The guy on offense that really needs to step up, well, there's a lot. There really is. There really is a lot, I feel like, because we need better. They need better performance out of Jacoby Ellsbury. They need better performance out of Brett Gardner. They need a way better performance out of Chase Headley. I think they could use a better average from Starlin Castro. But those four right there are going to be what makes this team a playoff team or not. And it's going to be, obviously, I think that we're looking at Chase Headley not necessarily being part of the team in July and August. In an ideal situation, maybe he's having a good enough year they can get they can get them off for something mid-season. But we'll see. With Chase Headley. Now the rotation: Tanaka, Sabathia, Pineda. Those are locked in stone. Tanaka's great. CC, I think, was underrated last year. Probably was the second best starter for the New York Yankees, and has getting credit that he needs to be better. While that might be true for this team to make a playoff run, I think CC needs to be just as good as he was last year. I'm not going to say he needs to be better. I'd love it to be if he was better, but I think if they can get what he was last year, that'd be very important. Mike Pineda, man, Big Mike needs to keep the ball in the ballpark. If he can do that, he could keep his ERA below 4. We know he gets the strikeouts. We know he gets the strikeouts. Last year I believe he was top 10. Ended up with 207. I mean, if it wasn't top 10, he was up there in the league. Brian Mitchell probably going to get the 4th rotation spot. I love Jordan Montgomery to be the 5th guy at some point whenever they need him. I love if Severino could be the 7th inning guy with Betances in the 8th and Chapman in the 9th. I know the bullpen's going to be fine with Clippard as well. And if Severino makes his transition to the bullpen, I think that bullpen's going to be completely okay with Shreve and Lane out of the bullpen as well. So will Gary Sanchez progress? Probably. But this is going to be a fun team to watch just because of that name alone. Yankees in 3rd place, though. Don't necessarily know if the pitching is going to be good enough, and they're going to need better play from their returning vets. I love the new vets, Matt Holliday and Chris Carter. Obviously, they need to play well as well. But the returning vets, Gardner, Ellsbury, Castro, and Headley, need to play at a high level if this team wants to make the playoffs. 2nd place team, I'm going with the Toronto Blue Jays, and that's why it pains me to put either of these teams ahead of the Blue Jays or Red Sox, but it pains me to put the Red Sox in first. I'll get to them in a minute, and you'll know why, and I'm sure you already do know why, that they're my first place pick, and they're not the only guy. I'm not the only one, let's just say that, to have them as a first place pick. Probably a lot of World Series people are favoring the Boston Red Sox. But let's get to the Toronto Blue Jays first. The rotation returns from basically at the end of last year. Estrada, Happ, Stroman, Liriano, Sanchez. That's a pretty darn good rotation, especially if Aaron Sanchez can replicate what he did last year. Francisco Liriano is already at a position right now that he's actually playing, I think, very good for this team. So, and I'm talking about in the spring training. We know when he had good spring training, he usually puts it together during the season. So, full season with Francisco Liriano might be pretty darn good for this Toronto Blue Jays team. Now, we know they lost Edwin Encarnacion. They replaced that with Kendrys Morales and Steve Pearce. I think those are two solid guys to replace him with. And Kendrys Morales, I think, I'm not going to say he can replace those numbers by himself, but what I will say is that I believe that the two of them together could end up being a great replacement for him. I think Morales is a solid DH for them, and in the different ballpark. Kansas City was more of a pitcher's ballpark. This is a hitter's ballpark in Toronto. The ball flies out of there, so Morales is a good pick as well. For fantasy pick for the Yankees. Fantasy pick for the Yankees would be probably Judge. Keep your eye on Torres, but it would probably be Judge late in draft. Back to the Blue Jays, though. Back end of the bullpen in Osuna, Grilly. They bring in J.P. Howell and they bring in J.P. Howell, like I said, and Joe Smith. Two guys that can help the back end of the bullpen. I like them in the bullpen. They're bringing in Mike Bolsinger as well to be the middle relief guy. The outfield, and this is where it gets into this maybe the second best or one of the best, if not right there with Kevin Kiermaier in center field. Defensively, Kevin Pillar. You guys probably seen a ton of highlights from Kevin Pillar, and that in center field, and that's just going to improve. That's going to stay the same. I mean, I don't know who should win the Gold Glove in center field, but it's kind of funny to look at their depth chart on Toronto website. It makes sense because they speak some French up there in Canada, but it says Centerfield, like center would be spelled in French. It's kind of funny. I don't know why. It's funny to me, but anyway, Melvin Upton Jr. off the bench, Ezekiel Carrera in left field, and then in the infield that includes Josh Donaldson, Troy Tulowitzki, for their sake, a healthy Devon Travis, Devin Travis, and Justin Smoke at first base. It's gonna be up to really Bautista to have a bounce back year, Donaldson to continue his greatness, and Tulowitzki to stay healthy, and really in Morales to get at least 75% of Encarnacion's production. But I think the offense is still going to be good enough. I think Carrera was coming on well last year, and I like Steve Pearce in the utility role for this team. I guess a guy to look out for would be Steve Pearce. He might, if he works himself into an everyday role, he could be a solid player in fantasy baseball as well. I'm not sure there's really a prospect to really look out for this team because their pitching is from 1 to 5. It's probably going to be the 1 to 5 if they all stay healthy to the end of the season. I don't think they're going to miss R.A. Dickey at all. So this is a solid team. I think that the mixture between the good pitching and being in the ballpark they are with the hitting that they do have is going to get them good enough to be the second best team in the American League East. And they'll be close because I'm not sure the Red Sox are going to run away with this division. They'll be close to the Red Sox. I think the Yankees will be right there for most of the year as well. Maybe even the Orioles will be close. Heck, like I said, I'm bullish on the Rays a little bit, so maybe even the Rays will hang in there. But ultimately, the first place team in this division has to go to the Boston Red Sox. And I just look at every single position, and I see a face, a player, a name that I think is a great player, honestly. A great player at their position. And it's just hard to look at it that way. Now, as you know, being a Yankee fan, it's scary, but they're just a good team. And an MLB analyst in me says this is a really good team. This is a team that should win the division. This is a team that is probably going to win the American League East and possibly be in the ALCS against maybe the Cleveland Indians, and that could be an epic battle. But let's talk about the team, and this is where the concern comes in. Let's talk about the concern first, and the concern is with David Price, who I'm shocked does not need Tommy John surgery, and you lose David Price, and that takes away that 1, 2, 3 solid playoff rotation, right? Rick Porcello, Chris Sale, David Price. It looks a little worse when it's just Rick Porcello and Chris Sale, because last year you just had Porcello and Sale and Pomeranz is the third before you lost into the got swept by the Cleveland Indians. But man, I do think that Chris Sale and Porcello is actually an upgrade over Price and Porcello, if that makes any sense to you. Basically, I'm saying that Sale is better than David Price. So the fact that as long as Sale's healthy, that's a better playoff rotation than Price was. But you need Price. I mean, this team will be absolutely great and even better on paper. And that's how good it was on paper with Price healthy. The 4 or 5 rotation spot, Eduardo Rodriguez, Stephen Wright. There are 2 guys that actually could be pretty darn good for this team. It's just going to be if they can get to that position. The outfield, Benintendi, Jackie Bradley Jr., and by the way, MVP candidate from last year, Mookie Betts, who lost out to Mike Trout. Man, that's a darn good outfield. And you got Chris Young coming off the bench, and Brock Holt being a utility guy out there as well. That's a solid outfield. Benintendi is a great young player. Probably going to hit at the top of that lineup, 1 or 2. He's going to score a lot of runs. He's going to be a huge part of that lineup if he can stay healthy, which he showed that maybe. I think he put on a lot of weight in the offseason to be more durable. So I really like this Red Sox team, unfortunately for Yankees fans. But for your Red Sox fans, it's going to be a good season for you because still got the Iron Man. I mean, obviously he has had his injury, but I look at him as an Iron Man only because of the reason of he just kind of gets lost in the sea of young talent. Dustin Pedroia. He's the leader on the field. He grinds it out each and every day. And he's probably the most important player on your team, on the team for the Red Sox. So Bogarts at shortstop, though, great. Anything you can get from Pablo Sandoval is probably going to be house money. But if it ends up being Brock Holt being the starter there eventually, then I think Red Sox fans will be like, so be it. But if Pablo Sandoval can be anything that he was at the bottom of this Red Sox lineup, then, forget about it. This team's definitely winning the division because Mitch Moreland, I think, will be able. That's the issue, right? The elephant in the room right now is, well, what about the loss of David Ortiz? I mean, how are they going to get? How are they really going to be able to replicate the success and the presence in the lineup that Ortiz that he leaves? The answer to that question is no. I don't think anyone can replace David Ortiz, but I do think Moreland's going to be solid first baseman with Ramirez being able to focus as a designated hitter. I think he actually bodes well better as a designated hitter. Hanley does. So give me. I do still think this team is going to be good enough. Like I said, if Pablo Sandoval can step up, then it's like, yes, they don't necessarily. I'm not saying they're not going to miss Ortiz, but they're not going to miss him in a sense of, well, if we had him, we would have won the division. They're still good enough to win the division, and a big reason for that is Kimbrel in the back end of the bullpen. Thornburg, the acquisition. Now, Thornburg will probably start the season on the DL with a trapezius strain. Trapezius strain? Anyway, trapezoid or whatever, I don't know. Something like that. But he could be solid in the back end of that bullpen. And Joe Kelly, the former starter, the former St. Louis Cardinal, in the back end of that bullpen, he was solid out of the bullpen late last year. And if he's a 7th and 8th inning guy for them, obviously he start out as an 8th inning guy with Fernando Abad. Carson Smith, if he can come back from a disabled list. I think he had Tommy John surgery last year, but he can come back from it. Matt Barnes, Robbie Ross Jr., Heath Hembry, a lot of good pitchers in that bullpen. So they're a well-rounded team. They're a good team. So the Red Sox are going to win this division. If I had to give you a player, it's kind of tough because of that. I do like Stephen Wright or Eduardo Rodriguez, whoever could win that rotation spot, because I think that they're going to do well. Sandy Leon's a solid catcher option. I'm not sure he's going to be as great as he was offensively for some stretches last year because it's kind of hard to replicate that success. But that's the only player I can give you because of how stacked this team is. Mitch Moreland, maybe on the downswing of drafts if you haven't drafted yet. But that is the American League East preview. Thank you for listening, and it's going to be a great year, not only in the American League East, but in the Major League Baseball. We'll have other division previews coming out very soon enough, so keep your eye on youtube.com/team1045 and 1045theteam.com for other blog posts, as well as the Sittin Sportside Podcast division previews. So, for the Sittin Sportside Podcast, if you didn't know, I'm Eric Hanman. You've been listening to Sittin Sportside Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Can't wait.